Steam Noir revolution is settled in the steampunk world of the German award-winning comic series Steam Noir. Emperor Julian is ruling here with an iron fist, but in our game the population is starting a revolution. In this video I will show you with a recent prototype how this is going on. Only a few minor details are left out, so you get an almost complete introduction to the game. There are 5 revolting groups of the population called factions. The students, suffragettes fighting for women's rights, the Mekanros, which are living steam robots, the Kalendarische Orden, a secret security squad with a desire for power, and finally the workers. We have a set of secret cards of which each player gets 1 at the beginning of the game, and 5 sets temporary support, 1 set for each player containing all factions. What this is good for I will explain later. Each faction is represented by 13 hand cards, 3 times 4, 5 and 6 and 2 times 7 and 8. The overall deck contains 75 hand cards. In this prototype there are still some question marks standing for possible portraits of crowdfunding supporters. Additionally, there are these reinforcement cards with a +3. You can add these to cards already in play to increase their value. Here is a 6 in play, and I add this reinforcement, changing it into a 9. I can also do this with cards played by opponents. We have also 8 Emperor cards from 8 up to 13, plus 2 special cards only used in 4 and 5 player games, and 1 Revolution card of each faction, value 3. A score track with markers of all factions and the Emperor showing the current open score. At the end of each round there will be 1 or 2 cards placed here and the corresponding marker is moved accordingly. Eventually we have a whole bunch of revolution point tokens gained by the players during the game. As a player I try to make the best out of the revolution for my secret faction. What the best is depends on whether the revolution ends successfully or it's put down by the troops of the Emperor. I will come back to this later in the video. Besides the cards placed to the score track, there is another way to score. This is one of the most important mechanisms you should really know. That is, you also gain points for promoting others. Here I played cards with a total of 18 for the students, making them the strongest faction of this round. Since I supported them more than all other players, I get 2 revolution points. And these will count towards my secret faction at the end of the game, no matter which faction I promoted here. Additionally, I decide now which of my cards of this faction will be placed to the score track. Well, I take the 5 because I don't want the students becoming too strong. I place this card to the score track, the symbols are only for showing where the rows start, and move the scoring marker accordingly. Also, the player who played the highest single card for this faction gets 1 revolution point. In this case, the player over here who changed his 8 into an 11 gets this additional point, counting for a secret faction at the end of the game. The setup is quite simple. 4 hidden revolution cards on one side of the playing area and 4 Emperor cards on the other side. Here with a 5+ because we are 4 players. The scoring track, markers and revolution point tokens are laid out at the side of the table. Each player gets a secret faction he wants to lead to victory, 1 set temporary support and of course hand cards. The game lasts 12 rounds called weeks and is divided into 3 months of 4 weeks each. At the beginning of each month you check the current open score and your hand cards and secretly bet which faction will perform best during the upcoming month. To do so you take the temporary support card of the chosen faction and put it on top of your hidden set. After 4 weeks' time we will see whether this was the correct choice or not. At the beginning of each week the topmost revolution card is revealed, showing which faction is already present with a value of 3. The same with the topmost Emperor card, showing how strong the Emperor shows up, here with a value of 8 + 5, making 13. During a week each player plays 3 from his 7 cards, all players simultaneously. First, you have to decide which of your cards you want to play and where. Either on the side of the revolution or, but not more than 1 of your 3 cards, as a traitor card to the side of the Emperor. When all players are ready, they play their cards at the same time, revealing them.
Gehen wir doch mal auf die Arbeiter alle.
Ja, finde ich schon auch.
Das ist Thomas.
Dann sollten wir vielleicht doch eher auf die Studenten gehen.
Machen wir doch jetzt die Studenten und nachher die
Alles
Arbeiter.
klar, machen wir erst die Studenten. Ne?
Genau.
Das ist echt witzig.
Studenten 8.
11 für die Frauen.
6 Mechandros. Wie machen wir das? Und
1, 2, 3.
Oh nee, was macht ihr denn da?
After having played cards 3 times, you check which faction is the strongest on the table. You add all revolutionary values of each faction but subtract traitor cards. So by playing a card as a traitor you can specifically weaken this faction. In this case, the workers only reach a total of 15 instead of 19. The Mechandros, on the other hand, reach 14 plus 13 plus 8, making 35, so they are the strongest faction. As I mentioned before, the player who played the highest total value for this strongest faction gets 2 revolution points, placing them onto his temporary support cards. Regarding the highest single card, we have a tie here. The reinforced 5 also adds up to 8. In this case, both players get their 1 point. The strength of the Emperor is the result of the Emperor card plus all traitors, here 17, much less than the Mechandros. So the player who performed strongest for these places one of his cards to the score track. Let's assume something different had happened during the week and a second traitor would have made the Emperor stronger than the strongest faction. Then the Emperor card is put to the score track and the success of the revolution becomes less probable. Of course, there might be ties like in this example, both Mechandros and the Emperor have a total of 26. Then simply both cards are placed to the score track. At the end of the week, each player may pick up one of his played cards again back to his hand and discard as many cards as he wishes. After that, he fills up his hand up to 7 cards again and the next week can begin. There is a reason why the additional revolution tokens are placed onto the temporary support cards. At the end of a month, all players reveal their topmost card and the points on it are added to the cards of this faction placed to the score track to determine the strongest faction of this month. Here, for example, the students only have a 5 card at the open score, but my additional 3 points make this 8 and another player's 6 points make it a total of 14. This makes the students the strongest faction of this month. When a player solely bet on the strongest faction, he gets 6 revolution points. More than one player divide these points, so here both players get 3 revolution points. Now the tokens are placed onto the secret faction for the final score and the revealed cards are taken out of the game, so you can only temporarily support each faction once during the game. Remember the core mechanism? I already collected 6 points now for the final score of my secret faction without having played a single card of this faction. At the end of the month, the cards are placed on top of the score track to get some space for the cards of the next month. After 3 months, all players reveal their secret faction. All of their collected revolution points are added to the card values and the scoring marker is moving accordingly. Now 1 of 3 different events will happen. If at least one of the 5 factions ends up stronger than the Emperor, he is chased away out of the country and the revolutionaries provide the new leader, usually the faction with the highest score. But beware, it might happen that a faction turns out being only the new dictator, usurping the regnancy with a gap of 15 or more points to the second strongest faction. If this happens, all the others together will immediately displace this faction and the second strongest wins the game. When the Emperor is stronger than all revolutionary factions, the revolution is put down, and the player whose faction has the least total points wins the game. For this faction will not be held responsible for the revolution by the Emperor. One of the challenges of this game is the decision whether to change sides and play it for the benefit of the Emperor and when to do so. If I do it too soon, the other players will ally against me, but if I do this too late, time is running short. But since players tend not to support each other closer to the end, the Emperor is going rather strong in this phase. Playing only for your own faction makes it easy for the traitor to win this week for the Emperor. The inner conflict of the revolutionary factions strengthens the ruler. Well, that's life.